Welcome back to the Monimate Podcast. If this show has been helping you think differently about financial stability, take a second to subscribe, like the episode, and drop a comment. It seriously helps more than you think, and we read them, so say something interesting.
Or at least say something that isn't great podcast. We know it's great. Tell us why.
He has been waiting to say that since episode 5. Anyway, Marcus is back, and today's conversation is different. We are not talking about pressure spikes. We are not revisiting compression weeks. We are going one layer deeper into something called long-term recovery architecture.
Which sounds like something a civil engineer would say at a dinner party, and everyone would immediately change the subject.
And yet, it is the most important thing most high earners have never thought about. So, stay at the table. Today, we are unpacking why people who earn a lot of money can still feel financially fragile, why strong income does not automatically equal strong stability, and what the actual structural difference is between someone who feels calm about money and someone who earns twice as much but feels perpetually behind.
Let's get into it.
In episode 7, we defined a recovery window, the stretch between surviving financial pressure and actually feeling stable again. But here is what we did not fully explore. Recovery windows do not exist in isolation. They are shaped by something larger, your income architecture.
Income architecture is how your money structurally moves. Salary, commission, quarterly distributions, client payments, retainers, bonus cycles. The pattern of how money arrives, not just how much.
And recovery architecture is how your system absorbs pressure across those income patterns, not just once in a tight month, but repeatedly over years across different financial seasons.
Think of it like this. 2 people both get punched. One has good footwork. They absorb it, reset, stay balanced. The other has a great punch themselves, but terrible footwork. They get hit, and it takes them 3 rounds to recover their positioning.
I was going to use a yoga metaphor, but I like the boxing one better.
That is the nicest thing you have ever said to me on this podcast.
The point is that recovery architecture is the footwork. It determines how quickly and how cleanly you return to a stable baseline after any financial disruption. And this is where high earners get seriously misled.
Let's talk about the specific illusion. Someone earns $250,000 a year. On paper, that sounds incredibly stable. It sounds like the kind of number where money stress should not exist.
And yet we hear from people at that income level all the time who describe feeling constantly behind. Slightly anxious, like one bad month could unravel something. And they feel embarrassed about it, which makes it worse.
Because the cultural script is, earn more, stress less. And when that does not match your actual experience, you assume something is wrong with you. You think, I must be bad at this. I must be spending too much. I must be missing something obvious.
But the real question is never how much. It is, how does it arrive? Because $250 a year landing as quarterly bonuses, variable commission, and concentrated client payments is a completely different financial experience than $250 arriving as a predictable salary every 2 weeks.
One of those structures allows for consistent recovery windows. The other creates episodic stability, strong months that feel invincible, weak months that feel alarming, and a constant oscillation between the two.
And here is the part that matters. That oscillation is not emotional weakness. It is architectural fragility. The feelings are correct. The diagnosis is wrong.
Which is honestly a relief for a lot of people to hear. You are not bad at managing money. Your structure is not designed for smooth recovery. Those are different problems with different solutions.
Very different. And fixable. But only if you know what you are actually dealing with. There are 3 layers to long-term recovery architecture: buffer depth, income diversification, and obligation elasticity. Each one affects how fast and how completely you recover after a pressure event.
Layer 1, buffer depth. And I want to be specific about what this means because people hear buffer and they immediately think emergency fund, 3 to 6 months of expenses, the standard advice.
Which is not wrong. but it is not complete. Buffer depth, in the context of recovery architecture, is not about the total size of your reserves. It is about your liquidity relative to your income variability. How much breathing room do you have specifically around the moments when income gets unpredictable?
If your income varies by 30% month to month, a buffer sized for a fixed income lifestyle is not actually a buffer. It is a suggestion.
A very optimistic suggestion. Buffer depth determines how long your recovery window can extend without triggering genuine panic, without you making decisions from fear rather than strategy.
Layer 2. Income diversification. This one gets talked about a lot in terms of investments and side income streams. But in the recovery context, diversification is specifically about reducing synchronization risk.
Synchronization risk is what happens when all your income is tied to the same timing node. One client, one employer, one annual cycle. When that node slows down or delays, your entire recovery architecture stalls at once.
It is like having all your flights booked through one airline. Fine until there is a delay, then everything cascades. Ask me how I know.
We are not going there today. Diversification in this sense means having income streams that do not all hold their breath at the same time. Even modest diversification, a small retainer, a secondary income source, something that moves on a different cycle, can dramatically reduce recovery window length.
Layer 3. Obligation elasticity. This is the one most high earners get wrong, and it is the one that is hardest to talk about without sounding judgmental.
We are going to talk about it anyway.
Obviously. Obligation elasticity is about how adjustable your fixed costs are. Can your lifestyle shrink during weaker cycles? Or is it anchored entirely to your peak income periods?
High earners very often build lifestyle infrastructure around their best months. The apartment lease signed after a record quarter, the car payment that made perfect sense after a strong bonus, the private school tuition that felt completely manageable when the commissions were flowing.
And then the bonus gets delayed, or the quarter comes in light. And every single one of those obligations is still exactly the same size.
That is low elasticity. And low elasticity turns a temporary income dip into a long recovery window. Not because the dip was severe, but because the expense floor cannot move.
The fix is not necessarily to downsize everything. It is to be deliberate about which obligations are elastic and which are not. To build some flexibility into the cost structure before you need it. Not as restriction, as architecture.
Here is something subtle that we want to sit with for a second. A strong year can hide weak architecture. And hiding weak architecture is one of the most financially dangerous things that can happen to a high earner.
Because the annual total looks impressive, the net worth is climbing, the lifestyle reflects success, and from the outside, and honestly even from the inside, everything looks like it is working.
But stability is not annual. Stability is sequential. It is about how each month connects to the next. And if your system requires 3 strong months to offset every weak one, you are not building resilience. You are running a structural deficit that just has not surfaced yet.
The analogy I keep coming back to is a business with great annual revenue but terrible cash flow. The accountant says the year looks good. The founder is on the phone with the bank every other week.
Not a fun phone call. Revenue does not equal liquidity. Annual totals do not equal sequential stability. And sequential stability is what determines your actual lived experience of money, whether you feel calm or whether you feel like you are constantly one cycle away from pressure.
Smooth recovery cycles create confidence. Erratic recovery cycles create vigilance. And chronic vigilance, even at high income, is exhausting in a way that is hard to explain to someone who has not felt it.
It feels like being successful and stressed at the same time, which is confusing and lonely because you feel like you are not allowed to talk about it.
Which is, by the way, exactly why this podcast exists.
That was almost poetic, Marcus.
I have my moments.
We need to draw a clear line between two things that sound similar but are fundamentally different: income stability and architectural stability.
Income stability is about the predictability of your earnings. How reliably does money arrive and in what amounts? High income stability means you know what is coming and roughly when.
Architectural stability is different. It is your system's ability to absorb variability without extended recovery. It is not about the income itself, it is about the infrastructure around the income.
And here is the thing that flips most people's assumptions. You can have low income stability, genuinely unpredictable earnings, and still have strong architectural stability. If your buffer is deep, your obligations are elastic, and your income is diversified across different timing nodes, you can weather a lot of variability without losing your footing.
Conversely, you can have perfectly stable income, same salary, same date every 2 weeks, and have weak architectural stability. If your buffer is thin, your obligations are anchored to your ceiling, and your entire financial life depends on that one income stream continuing without interruption, you are one job loss away from a very long recovery window.
Architecture determines the emotional experience of income, not the income itself. This is the line that most personal finance conversations completely skip.
Because the personal finance industry is built around income maximization. Earn more, invest more, grow the number. And those are not bad goals, but they are incomplete without architectural thinking. Without asking, how does this system absorb a hit? How fast does it reset? How smooth are the recovery cycles?
And this is the root of the high earner misread. They feel stress and they diagnose it as an income problem. I need to earn more. I need a raise. I need a better year. When actually, what they need is better spacing, better liquidity staging, better obligation scaling.
More income poured into a leaky architecture just leaks faster. The container has to change, not just the volume.
I am writing that one down.
Please do. Recovery speed might be the single most underrated metric in personal finance. Not income, not net worth, not savings rate. How long does it take you to feel normal again after financial pressure?
And normal here has a specific definition. Not relieved, not just above zero. Normal means you could absorb another disruption right now without panic. That is the benchmark.
If it takes you 3 weeks to get back to that point after every pressure event, your architecture is strained. 3 weeks of low-level vigilance every single cycle across a career, that compounds into something significant.
It compounds into fatigue, decision fatigue, emotional fatigue, a kind of chronic financial tiredness that does not show up in any spreadsheet, but absolutely shows up in how you think, how you lead, how you make choices under pressure.
If it takes you 3 days, that is a completely different life. 3 days of recalibration and you are back at the baseline. Calm, clear, ready.
That difference, 3 weeks versus 3 days, is entirely architectural. It is not about income size. Someone earning $80,000 with strong architecture can have a 3-day recovery window. Someone earning $300,000 with weak architecture can be stuck in a 3-week window after every quarter.
Recovery speed defines resilience, and resilience defines the quality of your financial life far more than any income figure does. This is the thing we keep coming back to because it keeps being true.
So, what do you actually do with this? 3 concrete architecture shifts. Not hacks, not shortcuts, structural moves.
First, stage your liquidity in layers. This is different from having one savings account and calling it emergency fund. Staged liquidity means you have an immediate buffer. Money that is accessible right now, no friction, covers the next 30 days of obligations. A secondary buffer, slightly less liquid, covers the 30 to 90-day window. And growth capital, money that is working, invested, building. These 3 layers serve completely different functions, and they should not be collapsed into one account.
The immediate buffer is your recovery layer. The secondary buffer is your resilience layer. The growth capital is your wealth layer. Mixing them creates the illusion of having more stability than you actually do.
Second, stress test your income timing. Ask yourself this specific question. If my largest single inflow delayed by 30 days, does my recovery architecture hold? Can I operate normally for a month without that payment arriving?
If the answer is no, or even maybe, that is a signal. Not a crisis, a signal. There is a difference.
And the fix is not to panic and move everything around. It is to quietly, over the next few cycles, build the immediate buffer up until the answer becomes yes. 30 days of operating capacity that does not depend on any single payment arriving on time.
Third, align your lifestyle to your reliable baseline. Not your best quarter, not your record month, not the year everything came together perfectly. We all have that year in our heads. Your reliable, conservative, this is what I can count on baseline.
This is the hardest one because lifestyle creep happens in the good months when the money feels real and the future feels bright. And it feels earned. It is earned. But obligations signed in peak months are still obligations in slow months.
Aligning to baseline does not mean living below your means in a punishing way. It means building your fixed cost floor at a level you can sustain in a median month, not a great month. And treating peak income as the source of buffer depth, not the permission slip for lifestyle expansion.
That single shift prevents more long recovery windows than almost anything else. Entrepreneurs deserve their own moment here because the recovery architecture problem shows up in a uniquely intense way when you run a business.
Because growth can mask fragility, and it often does. A business growing at 30% year over year looks structurally sound from every external angle. Revenue up, team expanding, product in market.
But if expenses are scaling faster than liquidity staging, if the cost structure is growing faster than the buffer depth, recovery windows are widening quietly behind the growth numbers. And nobody is measuring them.
Because entrepreneurs tend to measure what is going up. Revenue, users, team size, valuation. The metrics that feel like winning. Nobody puts recovery window length on the pitch deck.
Not yet, anyway. Not measuring what is straining, not how long it takes the business to financially reset after a rough quarter, not whether the operating buffer can absorb a slow month without the founder absorbing personal stress.
And widened recovery windows reduce strategic clarity. That is the real cost. When you are in a long recovery window, your decision-making changes. You start optimizing for immediate cash flow instead of long-term positioning. You take clients you should not take. You delay investments you should make. You avoid risks that are actually worth taking.
Architecture affects psychology. Psychology affects decisions. Decisions affect outcomes. And outcomes loop back and affect architecture. Which direction that loop runs, virtuous or vicious, depends significantly on how your recovery windows are designed.
Build the architecture first. Then build the business on top of it.
Or build them in parallel if you are already in it. But either way, this layer cannot be skipped. You can outrun weak architecture for a while. You cannot outrun it forever. Before we close, I want to offer something practical. If you earn well and you still feel slightly on edge, slightly behind, slightly tight, slightly like one bad month could unravel something, sit with this question. Is this an income problem or an architecture problem? Because those have very different solutions.
If it is income, you need more or better revenue. But if it is architecture, and it usually is, what you need is staged liquidity, reduced synchronization risk, and a cost floor that does not require your best months to be sustainable.
Stability is not how much you earn. It is how smoothly your system resets after pressure. And that smoothness is designable. That is the whole point of this conversation.
And once you see it, you cannot unsee it, which is either very motivating or very annoying depending on your personality.
Both are valid responses. Next week, we go deeper into runway. How many days your system can operate without income arriving? Because real stability is measured in time, not totals. And we are going to show you exactly how to calculate yours and what to do with that number.
Time reveals structure. Every time.
Subscribe so you do not miss it. And share this episode with someone who earns well but still feels tight between cycles. They will thank you. And they may not know why at first, but they will.
Unless they are in denial, in which case, give them a couple of weeks.
This is the Monimate Podcast, personal financial stability intelligence, built on trust, powered by intelligence. See pressure early, stay in control. I am Hope.
I am Marcus. We will see you next week.